Hello and welcome back to Jekyll and Hyde, Annotate with an Examiner. We are now on Chapter 9, Dr. Lanyon's Narrative. Now this title in and on itself is very, very important, but before we go into it, you might want to go and grab your copy of the text, a highlighter, a pen, as well as a notepad to collate some key quotations like I've encouraged you to do in previous videos. So, in terms of the title, up until now, we have only heard the story from Utterson's perspective, and in this chapter, we will get Lanyon's perspective. Remember that Lanyon has died and left a letter for Utterson to open only if Jekyll has disappeared or died. Again, these letters are symbolic of the secrecy pervading the novel and help to create mystery and tension. Another thing to note is that the reader only begins to realise the full truth about what's going on with Jekyll and Hyde and the mystery behind it when Utterson, as our guide, has been dispensed with. So now we no longer get Utterson's perspective, we no longer get Utterson's narrative, and it's only now that the truth can be uncovered. Up to this point, he has been used not only as a narrator, but as a means of deepening the mystery within the story, therefore heightening the tension and suspense within the text. So let's get reading. On the 9th of January, now 4 days ago, I received by the evening delivery a registered envelope addressed in the hand of my colleague, an old school companion, Henry Jekyll. I was a good deal surprised by this, for we were by no means in the habit of correspondence. I had seen the man, dined with him indeed the night before, and I could imagine nothing in our intercourse that should justify formality of registration. So Lanyon is saying here that him and Jekyll have been enjoying each other's company and have obviously got a strong friendship, something that's been quite turbulent, the friendship has. But he's sent him a letter by post, so by registered post, that's what registration means, which adds a formality to their relationship, but also heightens this idea of mystery and tension. So Lanyon can't help but wonder, why is he sending me a letter when he can just see me, when he's just seen me the other day? The contents increased my wonder, for this is how the letter ran. 10th December 18. Dear Lanyon, you are one of my oldest friends, and although we may have differed at times on scientific questions, I cannot remember, at least on my side, any break in our affection. There was never a day when, if you had said to me, Jekyll, my life, my honour, my reason depend upon you, I would not have sacrificed my left hand to help you. Lanyon, my life, my honour, my reason are all at your mercy. So this illuminates the close friendship that Lanyon and Jekyll shared prior to their scientific disagreements that we've already discussed before. These remarks, though, are a stark contrast to the earlier remarks Jekyll made of Lanyon. So remember, Jekyll described Lanyon as an ignorant, blatant pedant, and he spoke of how disappointed he was in him. So it's very different, the way he's addressing him here. And again, we begin to wonder what has changed in their relationship. Why has he suddenly gone from distancing himself from Lanyon to relaying his affections for him? If you fail me tonight, I am lost. You might suppose after this preface that I am going to ask you for something dishonourable to grant. Judge for yourself. I want you to postpone all other engagements for tonight. Even if you were summoned to the bedside of an emperor, to take a cab, unless your carriage should be actually at the door, and with this letter in your hand for consultation, to drive straight to my house. Poole, my butler, has his orders. You'll find him waiting your arrival with a locksmith. The door of my cabinet is then to be forced, and you are to go in alone, to open the glazed press letter E on the left hand, breaking the lock if it be shut, and to draw out with all its contents as they stand the fourth drawer from the top, or which is the same thing, the third from the bottom. In my extreme distress of wind, I have a morbid fear of misdirecting you, but even if I am in error, you may know the right drawer by its contents. Some powders, a file, and a paper book. This drawer I beg of you to carry back with you to Cavendish Square exactly as it stands. That is the first part of the service. Now for the second. So the letter that Lanyon describes begins with a confession of Jekyll's affection for Lanyon, but it also includes a kind of deal of one sacrifice for another that overshadows the honesty of this confession. So we're calling into question the honesty of this confession. Something doesn't seem quite right. You should be back if you set out at once on the receipt of this, long before midnight, but I will leave you that amount of margin, not only in the fear of one of those obstacles that can neither be prevented nor foreseen, but because an hour when your servants are in bed is to be preferred for what will then remain to do. So he's asking him to do this at midnight when nobody's around him. So it's quite ominous what he's asking him to do. There's an eeriness to it. He's asking for complete and utter secrecy, even when the servants are put to bed, for him to carry out this next thing that he's asking him to do. And it's at midnight as well. So Jekyll chooses midnight for his messenger to arrive. I want you to have a think about what is the significance of this time in connection with some of the themes in the novella that we've discussed so far. Remember that to be opinionated and critical is a really high level skill. So if you can answer that question in the comments, and I'd love to see what your responses are. It will help you to really elevate and lift the marks as well, to try and think of quotations that you can connect together. At midnight then, I have to ask you to be alone in your consulting room, to admit with your own hand into the house a man who will present himself in my name, and to place in his hands the drawer that you will have brought with you from my cabinet. Then you will have played your part and earned my gratitude completely. 5 minutes afterwards, if you insist upon an explanation, you'll have understood that these arrangements are of capital importance. So Jekyll lays out these instructions with scientific precision, even timing each one to make sure that the revelation he hints at happens at exactly the right time. But his plea relies on his faith in Lanyon. This piece of paper delivered to Lanyon is all that stands between Jekyll and his fate. So the fragility of this document and its importance creates an anxious contrast. And that by the neglect of one of them, fantastic as they must appear, you might have charged your conscience with my death or the shipwreck of my reason. Confident as I am that you will not trifle with this appeal, my heart sinks and my hand trembles at the bare thought of such a possibility. This letter shows the voice of a man on the edge. Lanyon represents Jekyll's last hope, much like the story itself. This document uses its cryptic covering up of the truth to entice Lanyon and to leave him with no choice but to follow its direction. Jekyll's refusal to confess continues, and the convention of letters and documents that by now makes up a weight of unspoken information serves this end perfectly. So remember, we've analysed the significance of these letters and these documents, especially their significance of being locked up or being enveloped in numerous envelopes, covering sort of the truth. So we've discussed that in a lot of detail in terms of its symbolic significance. If you haven't watched the previous videos, I would encourage you to watch them, because a lot of the information in this chapter really relates to a lot of the other information that we've already discussed in a lot of great detail. Think of me at this hour, in a strange place, labouring under a blackness of distress that no fancy can exaggerate, and yet well aware that if you will but punctually serve me, my troubles will roll away like a story that is told. Serve me, my dear Lanyon, and save your friend H.J. So the letters and documents of Dr. Jekyll have formed a mass of unanswered questions and unspoken confessions throughout the story, and have maintained the mystery of Hyde's identity. Now, for the first time, light is shed on those mysteries, and we begin to unravel all the layers of mystery behind what we had just read. P.S. I had already sealed this up when a fresh terror struck upon my soul. It is possible that the post office may fail me, and this letter not come into your hands until tomorrow morning. In that case, dear Lanyon, do my errand when it shall be most convenient for you in the course of the day, and once more expect my messenger at midnight. It may then already be too late, and if that night passes without event, you will know that you have seen the last of Henry Jekyll. So he's given him almost like an ultimatum. If he doesn't carry out this, then Jekyll will die. So it's almost like Lanyon has Jekyll's life in his hands and doesn't have any other option but to go ahead and follow these instructions. Upon the reading of this letter, I made sure my colleague was insane. So he's thinking Jekyll must have gone mad. He's gone mad. He's become insane. But till that was proved beyond the possibility of doubt, I felt bound to do as he requested. The less I understood of this farrago, the less I was in a position to judge of its importance. So a farrago is a muddled, confused mixture. An appeal so worded could not be set aside without a grave responsibility. I rose accordingly from table, got into a hansom, and drove straight to Jekyll's house. So a hansom is a taxi. The butler was awaiting my arrival. He had received by the same post as mine a registered letter of instruction, and had sent at once for a locksmith and a carpenter. The tradesmen came while we were yet speaking, and we moved in a body to old Dr. Denman's surgical theatre, from which, as you are doubtless aware, Jekyll's private cabinet is most conveniently entered. The door was very strong, the lock excellent. So once again, the recurring motif of the locked door is used, reminding us of the atmosphere of secrecy which pervades the novella. The details of the door to Jekyll's cabinet shows the lengths Jekyll has gone to keep this a secret. Later on, we're told that it takes 2 skilled men 2 hours to open it, again emphasising the magnitude of the secret. The carpenter avowed he would have great trouble and have to do much damage if force were to be used, and the locksmith was near despair, but this last was a handy fellow, and after 2 hours' work the door stood open. The press marked E was unlocked, and I took out the drawer, had it filled up with straw and tied in a sheet, and returned with it to Cavendish Square. Here I proceeded to examine its contents. The powders were neatly enough made up, but not with the nicety of the dispensing chemist, so that it was plain they were of Jekyll's private manufacture. So Jekyll's made these powders, this concoction Jekyll has made it. It's clearly not from a chemist. And when I opened one of the wrappers, I found what seemed to me a simple crystalline salt of a white colour. The phial to which I next turned my attention might have been about half full of a blood-red liqueur, which was highly pungent to the sense of smell, and seemed to me to contain phosphorus and some volatile ether. So we've got descriptions here hinting at dark, secretive and dangerous practices. So blood red liqueur, highly pungent to the sense of smell. Volatile ether as well is a chemical used as an anaesthetic. As the other ingredients, I could make no guess. The book was an ordinary version book and contained little but a series of dates. These covered a period of many years, and I observed that the entries ceased nearly a year ago and quite abruptly. Here and there a brief remark was appended to a date, usually no more than a single word, double, occurring perhaps 6 times in a total of several hundred entries, and once very early in the list and followed by several marks of exclamation. Total failure. Even this document, which provides the closest account we have to Jekyll's inner thoughts, is so sparse that it presents more mystery than it reveals. The single word comments cover up hours and hours of unknown experiments. So this document that's got the list of the times that Jekyll has taken this medication and the period of time that he's been taking it for, has got lots of periods of sort of that are not accounted for, again creating this sense of mystery. All this, though, it's whetted my curiosity, told me little that was definite. Here were a phial of some tincture, a paper of some salts, and the record of a series of experiments that had led, like too many of Jekyll's investigations, to no end of practical usefulness. How could the presence of these articles in my house affect either the honour, the sanity, or the life of my flighty colleague? If his messenger could go to one place, why could he not go to another? And even granting some impediment, why was this gentleman to be received by me in secret? The more I reflected, the more convinced I grew that I was dealing with a case of cerebral disease. So the two worlds of reason and madness appear before Lanyon and Utterson as the climax of the mystery approaches. All the paraphernalia of the world of science surrounds Lanyon as he explores Jekyll's study, suggesting that the answer to all this strangeness involves something rational like a chemical reaction. But the errand itself is so unexplained and unusual that Lanyon is sure the doctor has lost his mind. So remember that there's this constant conflict and contrast between reason and reason and mystery, reason and things that can't be explained. And this is a battle that Utterson fought from his previous narrations that we saw, and Lanyon is still fighting here. And we see this through the repetitive use of rhetorical questions. He's trying to use reason to determine and justify and figure out what's going on with Jekyll, but he can't seem to figure it out. Nothing is making sense. But the only thing that would make sense in his own mind is that Jekyll has clearly gone mad. And though I dismissed my servants to bed, I loaded an old revolver that I might be found in some posture of self-defence. So he's followed Jekyll's instructions, put the servants to bed, is alone, but he's protecting himself with the use of a gun because clearly he's scared. So this was part 1 of chapter 9. In the next episode, we will be doing the part 2 of chapter 9. If you found this video useful, then please remember to comment, like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Bye.